I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on GBM, we're sharing a deeply moving and compassionate children's story that opens an honest conversation about mental health through the eyes of a child. The name of the book, My Mother, the Bipolar Bear, tenderly follows a 7-year-old cub navigating confusion, love, and resilience while living with a mother who has bipolar disorder. It is written by a terrific author. Her name is Nancy Smith Earley, and this heartfelt book transforms stigma into understanding and fear into hope through creativity, courage, and unconditional love. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her on TV today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Nancy, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we see you are in a children's room. I think it's your granddaughter's
It
room.
is my granddaughter too.
And sitting in a little chair like that gave you inspiration for this book. Tell us how it all ties together.
Well, I started with signing up for a children's literature course at Northern Essex Community College, where I had been in and out for a long time. And I had a teacher who just would not let me quit on myself when I would come up with these ideas for ambitious projects. But one of the things, one of our micro assignments every week was to review a children's book. So I would go to my local library and I would sit in the chair, sit in a little chair and read a book and then review it. So I did that week after week after week. And somewhere along the way, I said, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I can write a book. So sitting in the little chair just reminds me of that happy time and that epiphany and what turned out to be a happy ending when I I shared the idea with my professor, and several times I was overwhelmed and said, I'm just not going to be able to finish this semester. She would not let me quit on myself. And at the end of the assignment, there was a fair with a poster display, whatever. And she said, so I'm going to tell you now, I also suffer with depression.
Wow.
And so she knew that having somebody to just tell you, don't let the door kick you
Yeah, she had skin in that game.
on the
So
way
she
back
kept,
in.
yeah, absolutely. She had skin in that game and she wanted you to keep on going, and we're glad you did. And also sitting in your granddaughter's room reinforces that this is a children's book, and it tells children about a very adult problem. Talk to us about who this book is for and the lessons that they'll learn through the polar bear family.
Well, I think I mentioned the press release that they wrote was written by somebody who listened to me so adeptly. I thought, how did you know all this? And they said, well, you answered a questionnaire. And I thought, wow, it just goes to show you when someone asks you the right questions, what comes out. And I shared things that I totally forgot about. But at any rate, it's written through the eyes of my son at the point in my illness where it started to impact his life negatively. Going to school, being a first grader, and with me forgetting things like his lunch money or whether it was crazy hat day or whatever it was, my illness was starting to surface where it hadn't, up until that time. So I just always remembered how much I had to rely on the helpers. And I always think of Mr. Rogers would always say, look for the helpers.
Yeah.
So there were helpers in his life. And I wanted to thank them, and I wanted to set an example to other people that might just pick the book up randomly and say, gee, you don't have to be a teacher. You could just be a neighbor. You could just be somebody who is okay with somebody being a little bit different and maybe is there to sort of support the child too, like the lunch lady covering his lunch money, if I forgot. And, a lot of very poignant things came out of people that did not judge me and understood that it was an illness that I didn't choose. In other words, people that were not guilty of practicing stigma. And
Right.
their stigma is still very, very prevalent in my life, but I can sort of pick and choose. I gravitate obviously toward people that are very accepting.
Mhm.
And I think being accepting starts just by being curious. It's
Mm.
okay to ask me anything you want to about bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
It's, I can't be ashamed of it. It's just something I was born with.
Yeah.
So,
And that's also, it's hard on children when mom has an issue like that. If she's got a broken leg, they can see it. If she's in a wheelchair, they can see it. They just know that you're different than other moms, and kids tend to be cruel, and schools tend to be rigid as well. There's not a lot of compassion for children sometimes within school because their mother forgot to do A, B, or C. Often the blame goes on the child, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So when I thought back to that time, I also I thought about it. I admit in the bio in the back of the book that some of these things where I sort of got my act together
Mhm.
actually took place a little bit later in his school career. But I thought I want to put it on paper for as soon as possible. So in the book, the mom and the little cub get some things done that just make his life a little easier. Like just go to the bank, bite the bullet, get $300 worth of $1 bills and hide them somewhere so that he can just get his own lunch money, buy a ton of socks, fill the drawers with the sock, do as
Right.
many things up front while you're feeling. I say make hay while the sun shines. Bipolar disorder is made up of lows and highs. And there are some in betweens where you're normal or just your real self. But I'm encouraging people who have bipolar disorder to be hyper vigilant about taking care of themselves. Your alcohol is not anybody's friend really, but especially if you have bipolar disorder, you have you have an urge to go overboard with gambling, hypersexuality, things
Yeah.
that are the hallmarks of the illness. But if you can just really take care of yourself with things like good diet and exercise, impeccable sleep hygiene is the number one. Then you can make your child's childhood as best as it can be.
Mm.
I've heard I've on on YouTube you can see the book, and most people say this was so touching it made me cry. But there were several people that wrote into me and said, I don't like the mother being able to make excuses. And typically, it would emerge at a later age where an issue with bipolar disorder is anger. Anger management can be very difficult. It fortunately is not something that you instinctively take out on a young child. I think you know well enough, not to be you know, uh, harsh with a
Right.
little child. But I think when children get more into their teenage years and you're having normal adolescent problems, if you have a parent with bipolar disorder, some of those clashes can be made worse by, one of the hallmarks of the illness, like I said, can be a challenge with anger management. So I wanted to be realistic about that,
Hmm.
it's not all roses.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's an
not.
issue that children and adults and families have to deal with. It's not all roses, as you say. There are challenges, but this book will help parents and children navigate those challenges. Also, this book is a great conversation starter, too, if you're having an issue and you want to talk to your child about it. Have you thought about that as well?
I have. I actually found out I had a neighbor across the street come over one day and she was very, very sad. And she said she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Hmm.
And she said she was so ashamed. Her kids were so confused. And I said, you're not going to believe this, but I have a book that might help your
Wow.
son. Her son was just, a third grader maybe. And the sweetest thing was he sat down on the bench with her. They read the book and then they went and played catch on my front
Wow.
lawn. And that's kind of one of the scenes in the book.
Right.
So it took a tough subject and it made it digestible for this little boy who was, very confused because he had seen some really erratic behavior when
Mm.
her illness, presented itself. So anyway, I have seen it work that way as a
Wonderful. It's a wonderful tool for that purpose. Give the folks at home an overview of what they'll find within the covers of your book, what the story is essentially about.
Well, my psychology professor said, "You got me nervous there." It was heartbreaking at first
Mm.
because the first part of the book talks about the difficulties. No socks in the drawer, mom's talking, nobody knows what no one's understanding her. It's embarrassing. Um, she forgets so it talks up front about the rough stuff, the challenging things that either um, are embarrassing. That's a big one. I embarrass myself a lot, but um, and then what happens? The pivoting moment is the little cub sits down and he decides to write his mom a letter, and he says, "Mom, I love you, but there are certain things I need every day, just normal everyday stuff." And it was a moment where the little cub says, "My mom cried and she hugged me and she said, 'Let's go take care of some things right now while I'm feeling just right.'" And they do that. They go to the bank and they go to get the socks and everything. And then the other thing that's very significant is the cub says, the mom says, "How about if we come up with a signal
Mm.
when I'm talking too much?" Or because in retrospect, I can remember seeing my son like eyes glazing over, saying, like, wanting to give me the hook because I was talking too much. And so in the book, we call it the bat signal.
Mhm.
And there's a reason why for that that's illustrated. But that was, an empowering moment for the little cub to be able to contribute to the solution, and the fact that he had the courage in the first place to articulate, that it was hard for him
Yeah.
and be honest with this.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It's a terrific story. It's very effective. I think it would be a wonderful conversation starter, as we mentioned before. And children will recognize themselves in the child and recognize themselves in the mother. Talk to us a little bit about your writing career. Now, you've written this book, and are you thinking about writing another?
I do have something I wouldn't say it's in the can, Logan.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping that this title will pass muster with whatever the copyright thing is. But the other book that I have carried around in my head, I am an avid home decorator, and I inherited my mom's talent for making something out of nothing. But in my career of doing some decorating, there were moments where people really took advantage of my, willingness to go. Anyway, so the title of the book is The Bipolar Bear's Guide to Decorating, as told to Nate Burkus, not that he asked. I'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. But you might have to do a title revision. Who knows? You can check with the folks and see what they say. But it sounds like it's going to be a good one, and it's going to be focusing on what? On um, home decoration?
Well, actually, not just home decoration, but my experience. Sometimes creative tasks can trigger um, hypermania or hypomania, and it can put you in a situation where you're just going too far, and maybe people will take advantage of that, or maybe they'll end up just not wanting to work with, whatever. So it was a combination of the actual fruit of my labors,
Hmm.
which is just a lot of amazing home decor,
Yeah.
um, and the stories that the story behind the story of how it came about. And
Wonderful.
it kind of speaks to the fact that when you have bipolar disorder, you're usually given some sort of consolation gift.
Yeah.
There's many people in history who, take someone like Selena Gomez, who
Right.
is, absolutely brilliant. And, some people think Einstein was bipolar. There's many people in history um, that people suspect had bipolar disorder.
Sure.
Michelangelo, like, I mean, so it tends to come with a lot of creative talent.
Right, right. That energy, that mania can be a negative, but it also could be a positive if funneled into the right positive pursuit. So yeah, I absolutely think you're onto something there with that. It can be, obviously a challenge, but it also can be a gift. Well, this book is definitely a gift. It is called My Mother, the Bipolar Bear. It is a powerful, compassionate story that helps children and families replace fear with understanding and stigma with love. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Logan. It was a pleasure being here. Wonderful to meet you.
Great having you on the show. I appreciate your time, your insight, and the wonderful work you've done on this book. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford for the Global Book Network. So long for now.